you?
You've done iron. Let them
Great anchor until it was a tragic across the realm. Foul, but the great who so it is. Brave tar seek to become
let the one. Well, all day is ribbon, and I will lend the fingers. Now go let the words. Now go let the word.
come round, have you? Well, I knew you would. You're a man of reason. True and true. Ah, well, what do you know? Now, how did I get that? I took you for a demi-human, an innocent mistake. Water under the... A true... I'm patches, harnessed like you. Only for now. In exchange for my... But honestly, frankly. So don't be a stranger. I'll be ready to wheel it. Don't forget to... I'll be ready to... Well, nice all a bit and welcome. You won't need a... Cheers for that. Well, well, well. I should have known, you scheming little thief. The gods demand vengeance. Vengeance!
mistress said, but I was a... Could I ask that thug only if you've... Oh, what a blessing. The thug should be resting, please. The thug should be resting at an abandoned home, please.
I welcome. I am my apology. Do you know how it came to? Well, that is the shattering has. It is here by the matrimony, and so the Erdtree. Oh, was you are free to. I would serve as your. If you find anything, unless in which case. Is there something?
What do you need? I don't want any trouble. All done? Well, be on your way then. back. Goodbye.
even after the nerfs it received. You can still get that weapon if you follow his questline. Alternatively, even if you do kill him, you can actually still get his armor set as well. So you actually don't miss that much by killing him and grabbing that weapon early. But for this guy, we don't need to do that. We're just going to continue onwards under the archway and head east around this battle towards the next site of grace. And what
that urge to murder and then wear his face arrived very quickly. But when I finally did exterminate this jerk, all I got was his weird flower hammer. Luckily, I figured out how to get Beret's mask so you too can look this stylish and creepy. I'm Jamie Latour, and this is where to find the white mask in Elden Ring. To get your hands on this mask, you need to reach the Mogwin Palace region. I previously covered how to get here in my last video, and that's linked below in the description. But to sum it up quick and easy, you get here by either completing Beret's questline or using a portal that's found here in the consecrated snowfield. Where we need to go is this big, bloody lake. It's easier to get here by using the snowfield portal, as it will warp you near a site of grace that's close to the shore of the Blood Lake. But it may take you a while to reach this late game area, and we want that creepy white mask right now. You can get to the lake by using the Pure Blood Knight's medal that you get from Vere, but you will need to get by these red albinuric guys with devil horns first. They themselves aren't too tough, but they summon gigantic ghost skeletons that can be a pain, especially if you're below level 90, which is about the recommended level for this region. Thankfully, you can sneak by them by hugging this wall over to the right until you reach that lovely bloody lake. Be careful around here if you're underleveled, as there's a ton of tough red bloody albinurics, angry bloody dogs, the lake. White Mac call you maidenless. Guys look just like Vere, although at no point do they laugh at you and call you maidenless. The nameless White Masks can be difficult opponents as they use daggers that do bleed damage and will perform the Swarm of Flies incantation to inflict even more bleed damage. Guys, come on. I only have so much blood. There are 3 nameless White Masks who can invade your world. However, it seems like the one who will drop the White Mask is located at this spot on the map. You need to kill this specific invader to score the White Mask and the War Surgeon armor set. Keep in mind that if you kill this region's boss, Moog, the Lord of Blood, then these NPCs will no longer spawn and you can't get this mask. Now you may be asking, why am I going out of my way to get a mask that makes me look like this douche? Well, the White Mask is actually a really good piece of headwear if you're running a bleed build, as it will give you a 10% attack power buff when you inflict any kind of bleed damage on an enemy. Of course, the downside to this buff is that you need to walk around looking like Vere, but as long as you don't mind calling people maidenless, that shouldn't be a problem. For more Elden Ring news and guides, check out the game.
Done. Then I backed out to the title menu again and went back offline. There is a way you can do this in offline. Belfry Site of Grace and taking this crafted scion, Lord of Blood's favour spot in the game, because you can literally rinse and repeat this when you need to level up your character. Talking to Vare again, and he's basically revenge on the grafted scion. Grab the Grace, and then you want to head to this tower, and I'll show you why. You want to use the bridge, and then follow this route on Lou's questline. Have a couple of items, one of which is related to Nefeli Lou's questline. The first door you ever walked out of. Swing a right and grab the Stormhawk King, which is the quest item for Nefeli Lou. Then you want to go through the door on the right again and grab the Stormhawk Dean Spirit Summon. Finally, you can hop over the ledge, and there we are. Our bloody maiden is sat right in front of us. Interact with the maiden, and we now have a bloody Lord of Blood's favour. Head back to the Rose Church and start talking to Var, Lord of Blood's favour. Head back to the Rose Church and start talking to Var. Your Blood Knight's medal.
You should have this.
I do. And now I'm going to show you how to get to the best rune farming spot in the game, because you can literally rinse and repeat this. The palace. I'm not going to bang on about rune farming because there's like a gazillion videos show and shoot this stupid big red pigeon and he'll run off the ledge and die. Instant runes.
What are you at, ladies and gentlemen? Pressing one NPC to continue game enough that you get to Altus Plateau. Once you get here, you need to make your way to this location right here. There's a broken bridge. There's a site of grace here as well. And next to the site of grace, there's a portal that you're going to need to use. Once we use the portal, we need to make our way down to this location. Now you'll know you're on the right track when you see this carriage being pulled by giants. There's actually a pretty good weapon in this carriage if you want to check it out. Exact spot, right here in this ruins, you'll see a red summon sign. So when you activate this summon sign, you're going to invade the NPC, and once you defeat them, this would be the same thing as if you invaded, or if you need. Now I defeated this guy and it worked for me, but I'm actually not sure if you need to defeat him, because I know with the players you only need to invade and you can leave right away without defeating them. So I'm not sure if you can just invade this guy and then go progress the quest, or if you need to defeat them. If anyone knows if just invading is good enough to complete this quest, please let me know. That press White Mask Barrier's questline, or that if you invade and defeat this guy, you'll be able to progress White Mask Barrier's questline and get to Mogwin Palace without even needing to be online. Hit that like button if you want to help the video out.
Bosh. Rinse and repeat until you want to level up and
Tony, Naomi, and Sabbath, what they created and the influence that it has is completely global. You know, I can't name one band that hasn't been touched by that in some way, but especially the metal bands. And they will all tip their hat to Black Sabbath as being a massive influence, because that's where it comes from.
Anyone who's been in a metal band since 1980 and on has stolen from Black Sabbath. I mean, years later, to me, he was like, well, if the devil looked like somebody, it would look like that, who will then murder you with his guitar riffs.
Long dark hair, mustache, black clothes, black guitar, crosses. It's fucking heavy.
What Tony created was like a whole, it was like a whole style. The music, the look, the danger, the excitement is still cool today.
It's different for me because once you get to know somebody, you separate the myth from the man. The word that comes to mind is extraordinary.
A lot of my family relations played instruments, drums and piano and a lot of accordions, really, being Italian. My father played accordion and harmonica. They were always they were very poor and most of the time out working, So I didn't really hear my dad play much, very rare, really. He'd pick up the accordion and play. But that was basically my first instrument, because being in the family, I started to learn to play it. First of all, I wanted to be a drummer, but it was too noisy, so I got listening to different music. I got attracted to the guitar. Well, it was more rock and roll then I used to listen to, because that was on the radio, but it would sort of be Chuck Berry stuff or Buddy Holly or somebody like that. What really appealed to me later was the instrumental stuff by the Shadows, who were probably the biggest instrumental band in England at the time. Cliff Richard was a singer, and then they used to back him. But they also did instrumentals, which for me was great because I could try and learn the instrumentals. It was something to learn. So I used to listen, wait for the radio, and they did the top 20 countdown, and wait till they come on and tape them, and then try and learn to play them.
Birmingham, long known as the workshop of the world, is a city forged in steel, smoke and sweat. Rising from the Midlands, the skyline is marked not by glittering towers, but by factory chimneys. Yet beneath the grit lies a sense of pride and endurance. Here, amid the smoke and the steel, the working man's spirit holds firm, unyielding, resilient, and forever tied to the industrial heartbeat of England.
The city was okay, I mean, but there weren't a lot of nightlife as such to do in them days. But the area where we lived was called Aston, and it was a fairly rough area. It was nothing to do, really, apart from fight. It was a tough city. It's equivalent to Detroit, I suppose, with all the manufacturing and cars and stuff. It was difficult, really, because there was a lot of gangs and stuff around. So if you weren't in a gang, it was a bit difficult, And I didn't want to particularly be in a gang. So the music side of it sort of really helped me get away from that.
I was born in '51. I think the country was still kind of getting its act together in terms of growth and development. So young people were just given no opportunities. We were just no consideration, There was nothing for anybody to do, so you were just loose on the streets in that respect. And so, joining a gang, all part of the hard as nails environment. But it was very, very tough. You got to remember as well, the UK, and we're coming out of the Second World War. I think just the fact that we didn't see any opportunities as younger people just made it very, very frustrating and made you bitter. You just felt as though nobody cared about you. And so you can imagine the frustration that builds in a younger person.
Growing up in Birmingham, pretty multi-layered for me. I'm from a council estate, which is sort of East Birmingham. You know, not that far from the whole area where, like, Ozzy was from, like Aston. I mean, Birmingham is you could hear the factories at night, you know, which is obviously ingrained in a lot of us who make this form of, you know, essentially sort of subversive music, I guess. You know, like Priest, Sabbath, Godflesh, and Napalm Death. You know, this Birmingham thing, it's inescapably a product of its environment. I couldn't imagine being in a rural environment and having birthed this music, you know.
Yeah, I was in a factory, and strangely enough, I'd given my notice in to leave because I was going to turn professional with a band, go to Europe. So I'd auditioned with this band, they liked me, and I was about to get ready to go away, which would have been the first time for me, you know, and I was really excited about it. I went to work on the morning, and I used to do welding, electric welding and gas welding in the factory. And the one day this person didn't come in who used to send me the metal down, and I'd weld it. And they said, you've got to go on the machine yourself because there's nobody else to do it. Oh, God. So they put me on this big, huge, giant guillotine press. So as I'm pushing the metal through into the press, the machine came down on my hand. And the action of pulling my hand back quick, I pulled the ends of the fingers off. I mean, that was it then for me. I thought, oh, God. I just couldn't believe it, you know, the last day. And before that, I went home for lunch, and I said to my mother, I'm not going to go in this afternoon because, you know, you go back and you finish off the job properly. So, God, so I went back, and that's what happened.
Before hearing Sabbath, I saw them. I remember seeing Ozzy, and I remember seeing Tony, and I remember seeing that mad mouth and that mad mustache, and learning that this guy has no fingers. You know what I mean? Those are the first stories I heard. That's what I was told as a kid. It was almost like I grew up in a guitar shop. It was like, ooh, Tony Iommi's got no fingers. Yet he's one of the craziest guitar players because he used to work in industry, and he got the tops of his fingers cut off. And here's a crazy story. I remember at Download Festival, it used to be Monsters of Rock, I was about 11, and I remember someone telling me that Tony Iommi was over there, and I, without hesitation, ran up to him. And I need to see if I can find this photo, because Tony doesn't know this. I've never told him this, so I'm telling him now that I ran up to him as an 11-year-old, and the first thing I did I took his left hand, or his right hand, and I looked at his fingers to see if they were there, and he chuckled at me, and he took a photo of me. And what's cool as a kid, when you see someone as a superhero, and you see someone as like, your Batman or whatever, and then you hear a song goes, I'll never forget it. It sounded like a horror movie with this sinister voice that sounds like Dracula or some shit, you know what I mean? When you think like, you watch those old black and white movies and there's like Dracula or Frankenstein, and then Ozzy represents that vocally. I just think there was no limit to where they wanted to go because they were just four lads naively created music that ended up being pivotal to rock as a genre. You know what I mean? In its beginnings of a new avenue. You know, I think like when we talk about what they did and what they achieved now, it's all in hindsight. They invented metal. It came from Birmingham. It came from the steelworks. It came from the industrial city that was Birmingham. But the coolest thing, in my opinion, about South, it was rooted in the blues, and it was rooted in instinct, and it was rooted in naivety. Blues music was dark. It was an act of rebellion. People forget that. It was an act of defiance. And, you know, you could either dance to it or you could cry to it. You could either dance to it or you could fight to it and mourn to it and live to it. You know what I'm saying? I think there was a million different branches on the tree of the blues that turned into rock music. You know, it turned into like pop music like the Beatles, it turned into rock and roll music like the Rolling Stones, or it turned into metal. And that was Black Sabbath.
The firm where I worked, the manager of the firm came round to my house to see how I was, and he said, I bought you an EP around, will you play it? I went, oh no. I said, I don't want to listen to music now. I was really depressed. The last thing I wanted to do was listen to a guitar player. He said, no, he said, put it on, and it's interesting, the story. And he told me about what had happened to Django Reinhardt, and I put it on. I couldn't believe it. I thought, you know, it was just great. You know, when I was first introduced to listening to his stuff, I couldn't believe it, because I liked bluesy stuff and jazz. And when I heard his gypsy jazz, it was really brilliant. And especially having lost the use of two fingers. It was just amazing. I'd try, you know, listen to it a lot, and because I could relate to that after me doing the same sort of thing, you know, damaging two fingers. And it really inspired me to get to learn to play more by, you know, the use of, by doing something with my fingers. So I made these sort of tips for them, and so I could play. I can't remember an exact time, but it was, I did, while the bandages were on, I was trying to learn to play with my two fingers. I went to see various specialists, and they said, you might as well pack up, you're never going to be able to play, which was really depressing. But I wouldn't accept that. I went back and I started to make my own tips. It was trial and error, so over a period, it took a while, you know, I was trying different things where I could use, and I would keep them on my fingers, and I made something out of plastic and it would just slip off. So I had to come up with putting material on so it'd grip the string and wouldn't rip it. And I used leather in the end. I tried different things, and leather worked the best. And that's, I think, what made me sort of come up with the sort of Black Sabbath thing, the sound, because trying to make the sound bigger to fill in for the full chord that I couldn't play anymore.
Well, you know, it's very hard to be completely original in music because we're all influenced by something, otherwise we wouldn't exist. I don't know where Tony's stuff came from, though. I really don't. He starts doing this riffy stuff, and it's very dark. There's a sort of point in music where people want to be kind of angry and heavy on guitars. And Jimmy Page is there, Led Zeppelin. Jeff Beck's been there with the Truth album. It's gluey and dark and deep. And Tony does all this stuff, a lot of fifths in the way he plays, a lot of sustain, but a lot of this chug thing, this choke thing. And Tony kind of brought the whole spectrum of what you could do with those kind of low strings of a guitar together into one package. And it was completely original. And it took people a long time to admit that Black Sabbath were totally original.
What comes to mind when I think of Tony Iommi, I think the greatest riff writer of all time. It is a catalog of riffs unlike anyone in history. How, from the simplest notes, like I took some guitar lessons when I was younger and asked them to teach me Black Sabbath songs, and my guitar teacher was kind of snooty because of the simplicity of Sweet Leaf or whatever. He sort of poo-pooed it, and he's like, well, you could probably figure it. I'm like, dude, you don't understand greatness. And one of the things about Black Sabbath was it helped me to like have confidence in my own opinions about music. Because there were people that were far more advanced players who disliked that band. And I said, you just don't understand what's great about it. Like I'm in the tribe on this one and you just don't get it. And that has influenced the DNA of Tony Iommi is in every riff that I've ever written.
I think it goes back to his simplicity again, because you're mentioning players that you talk about Hendrix, and it's like, he definitely had his hand in, what heavy metal started out as. I don't think he would think that. I don't know if he would. I think he was more of a blues man, When you talk about Eddie and you talk about, Jimmy Page, they all had their other strengths, but I just see Tony as this direct line to what we consider heavy music nowadays, because he was so consistent and his tone was always like memorable and recognizable. But it's all about the riff within the song Actually, the first time I heard them, I remember going to the mall with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, you can get a record, right?" So I got We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll. So I ended up putting this thing on, and I was just beyond terrified. The joke I always say is like, I put it on, I was Catholic when I put it on. Then by the time I got midway through the album, I became a full-blown Satanist, and then at the end of the record, I converted back to Catholicism just so I could thank God for creating Black Sabbath. So, you know, it's just like he actually created an art form. So, I mean, you know, so it's just like we're all employed because of this one guy. I'm just saying that he created this style of music. You know, I mean, obviously with Geezer, Bill, and Oz. But I mean, it's just, you know, his riff writing, you know, it truly mind-blowing. I mean, it really is its own art form, you know, so, but it's just, yeah, his legacy, it's lights out.
As much as anybody can be original in the world of music or rock music or anything, they were the first. And I always call him, he's a godfather of heavy metal, which he is. You know, find someone else who could wear that crown. Tony began all that stuff, and it's colossal. Everyone will tell you, all around the world now, people who play heavy music, metal music, whatever they want to call it, thrash music, it's influenced by Tony. He's there in everybody.
Ozzy used to be at the same school as me. He was only a year younger than me. We never really associated at school because, you know, you always sort of knock about with a couple of your own friends out the same year. So he was in a different year, so we never sort of associated with him. And when I was in a band with Bill Ward up in Carlisle, with Mythology, when we broke up, we came back to Birmingham, and we decided that we wanted to stick together and form a band. And one day, we went into the music shop in Birmingham, and there was an advert saying, Ozzy Zig requires gig. And I said to Bill, I know an Ozzy, but it can't be him. He can't sing. I didn't even think he could sing or anything. You know. I'd never heard him. So anyway, sure enough, we go round to his house, followed the advert, and knocked on the door. His mum came to the door, and we said, we've come about the advert, and she said, oh, John, it's for you. And I'm seeing him walk up the hall. I said to Bill, forget it. And he went, why? I'll tell you later, So anyway, we talked to him for a bit, and then we left and never made any decisions or anything. And then 2 days later, Ozzy came round to my house, because I lived not that far from where he lived. We all lived in the same sort of area. So he came round with Geezer to my house. And we had a shop, my mother and father had a shop at that point. And so they came round and said, do you know any drummers? Oh, God, I said, well, yeah, Bill's a drummer. And Bill said, I'm not doing anything. He said, oh, unless we all go together. So we decided to get together and give it a go. And what a row it was. I mean, it was absolutely horrible. Because me and Bill, the band we were playing before, we really got sort of tight and really, used to everybody. But then when we got with Geezer and Ozzy, Geezer'd never played the bass before. He was a guitar player, really. And it was a shamble. But it's amazing how we're stuck with it. And it came together really quick, you know. We started getting these gigs from an agent that Bill and myself knew up towards Scotland. And I'd be on the phone saying, and she'd go, you do play top 20 stuff, don't you? Oh, yeah, we play top 20. We didn't. It was all 12-bar blues stuff. And she went, OK, I'll give you a go. Then you can come up, do 3 days up here. And, we went up and we died of death. It was so